I tell my corporate clients all the time, like, you don't get to say a space is safe because you said so. If I tell you to come in my space, it's a safe space, and then the first thing you do is make a post and you get attacked for what you're saying, you're like, safe for who? Right? Can we define safety, please? Welcome back to the Inclusive Business Lounge, the podcast. Like that, I feel like I've been on hold forever, getting episodes out there, and how timely and it is to have Classie, who has previously recorded on the podcast before, back with us today. And it took us forever to even start this recording because we have just so much to talk about and so much good information to get to you. So we just had to hit that record button and get this conversation started. So today we are talking about, where is the village? You know, we talk about having a village and all of these things to grow in community. And we're going to talk about that village. Does it exist? Where is it at? How to create it with Classie Watson. So Classie, I know we've had conversations before, but introduce yourself to us again. Welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back, girl. I love it. I always love talking with Lakeisha because we just have such enriching conversations, and they're really meaningful and meaty. So thank you for inviting me to come back, because y'all, when you get an invite to come back, that's a good thing. That is a good thing. So thank you for that. But I am Classie Watson. I'm the founder of Intentional Life and Business Design. It's CW, Intentional Life and Business Design. So essentially, I am an intentional life design and business consultant. So my whole focus is helping people design their business in a way that actually aligns with the life and the lifestyle they want to live, how they want to feel. And traditionally, that's going to look more like more freedom, right? More personal margin in your life, more time for the things that you enjoy, and giving you the opportunity to live a richer life, a life, I like to say, that's in full color, where you have more meaningful moments, but instead of feeling like you're a slave to your business, or to, even if it's a role that you particularly have because you're still working in corporate, you have a career outside of your business. So we do also focus on just life design coaching, if you're not a business owner, to help you learn, how do I develop healthy habits? So I am a trained clinical mental health therapist. So we also look at different aspects of your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, creating healthy habits, healthy routines, learning to love yourself, and really learning how to pour into your life in a way that you desire, so that we live authentic lives that pour love back into ourselves, lead authentic businesses that pour love and financial freedom and stability back into ourselves and into our families. But most importantly, in a way that is intentional and gives us the steps and the structure to ensure that we achieve the goals that we have and the vision that we've set. So that's me in a nutshell. That's it. I'm your go-to for all of those conversations around wellness in life and in business, and how to strategically get there in a safe and secure way.
And now you can see why our pre-conversation took so long, because, you know, we were just having this conversation the other day about starting businesses and being in businesses. And now that I've been in business 5 years, having that restructure of what I thought I wanted versus what I really want, because, you know, we deserve that soft life, and whatever you define a soft life as, and how to get that. And sometimes entrepreneurship does not equal soft life, right? If you're not doing these things, if you're not being intentional with how to create your business. So so many different avenues and approaches when we talk about getting in with you and having someone come in and really design your life. I love it. We're gonna have this conversation, and then of course I'm hopping back on her calendar to have more conversations, because that you know, we've worked together previously, we've been connected for a while, and I still talk about, you know, the discernment that I learned through having conversations with you and being able to decipher, you know, what I wanted when I wanted it, and how to let people come into my space. So having repeat people and having people in your space that you want to go back to is really what we're talking about today, because finding that village and creating that village in a collaborative way is difficult for us. There's so many people out here trying to take advantage of your lack of knowledge in a certain space and sell you things you don't need. That's something that we run into a lot. So understanding the village concept, and it's always been said, like, it takes a village. We talk about raising kids, or if we're talking about women's empowerment, it takes a village, right? But have we ever really felt that village? Because remember, latchkey kids, like, where was the village? We talk about that's when the village was, but you were coming home from school and locking the door, and your mama told you don't open that door, don't answer the phone, all of these things. So when have we really had this village concept?
Yeah, I mean, that is such a good question. When have we actually had the village concept? And I don't think we have, right? Because here's the thing. We've had the concept. Conceptualizing something it's idea based.
Yeah.
When have we really seen it exist in the real world where it was tangible? We could feel it, we could see it, right? We could experience it in such a way that we're emotionally connected to it. When we think of the term village, we have this like deep sense of nostalgia associated to it because we have an idea of what it's like, because we're thinking about in terms of what life was like pre the type of civilization we have now, where we were living in villages, where we had this strong sense of community support for the tribe, right? Where everybody's looking out for the other person. We're hunting, we're gathering, and in order to survive, you had to depend and fully trust those in your village, those in your community. But the problem is, in modern society, we talk about the concept of it, but creating it in real life, it leads the conversation is, did it ever really exist? Like what you were saying, where did it go, or did it really exist? And so for me, when I think about the village, I think it has only existed in the terms of concept and ideology when it comes to how we're developing connections in the business world, how we're developing relationships in the business world, especially amongst women.
Right.
Because generally we have these, when we talk about women and developing relationships and women supporting women, and we say all of these terms, we often find ourselves still in these silos, competing, and really facing a barrage of expectations that really make true connection challenging, that make that true trust that I can depend on you to hunt and gather for me, and you're going to come back and provide, and you're going to pour love into me in a way that doesn't make me feel insecure or unsafe or as if I owe you something. So for me, I believe what we have right now is the opportunity to reimagine this concept and idea of the village and what it could really look like, what real steps we can take to reclaim certain spaces, to reclaim the real tangible ability to access and experience the village and what we desire in our hearts to have, which is that sense of trust, true connection, safety, security, dependency on other women, and the ability to be vulnerable and show up as our authentic self. So I think conceptually, I think the concept of it, and I hope that answers your question. I think the concept of it has existed, and it's been very idealistic, but really tangibly finding those safe spaces, that's where I don't believe they are ever existing in the fullness of what they could and should be.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned so many different great points as per usual. But one of those things was, the competition and the societal pressures and that lack of trust that we really have when we're trying to find these spaces, because we've been groomed that there's not enough space for everyone, right? And so somebody's got to be left behind. And we get into this competitive mode, and like I'm only going to give you so much of the piece, not everything. So
Yeah.
really re-trusting and getting in a space where we can really build trust with people who look like us, or with women in these spaces, so that we are having these productive villages, creating. And I'm such a collaborative person that if you ask me for something, like I'm going to tell you, like I have no bone to gatekeep anything in my body.
Right.
I believe that what is for me is already been determined for me, and so there's no need for me to like try to block things off. And that's why I've always been so willing to be like, oh, have you thought about this, or here's this resource, or whatever. And I think a lot of people don't have someone like that in their lives, and that makes me like sad. Like that there are people, like when you create systems or you create spaces, a lot of mean girl energy can come out. And even to those people, I always want to like wrap my arms around them and be like, you don't have to be that way. Like, what is it that you need? Because it's something in them that is making them act that way.
Yeah.
Or they've not been taught anything different or shown anything different. And so that's what's coming out. So I've always had this ability to see all sides of someone's story or someone's existence. And I think that that's just like my superpower, I guess.
Yeah, and because we need people like you that can see that in these spaces, because that's where you've built a community outside of these spaces. You've created your own spaces similar to I've created my own spaces. I've built community. I've built different networks. But if you didn't go up and show that sort of care, that sort of nurturing spirit, perhaps you wouldn't have been able to create a community outside of that community,
Right.
and maybe get those women to come and link arms with you and to start to reciprocate that. Because when we do realize that the way we see other people's behaviors, of course we're going to observe it, we're going to make a judgment call based on that, and make a decision of discernment based on that judgment call of how we're going to engage with this person. So we could look at it as a negative and then not engage with that person at all, or we can see the underlying issues that are underneath it, that sense of fear or competition, or the story and narrative that they may have been navigating off of. I remember I had a young woman, and we were talking about like a movie. It was a very old movie, and I was very surprised that she knew the movie. And so I just asked her casually, I'm like, how old are you? I was curious. In no way, shape, form, or fashion was my intention, or was I attempting to, demean her or belittle her for being younger. I was genuinely surprised, right? And so I said, well, how old are you? Because I know I'm a little bit older than you. How do you know these, older movies? Did you watch them with your grandparents? Usually you were exposed to it in some way, right?
Yeah.
And so she was more defensive in her response. And so I asked her what that was about. And it's because in her role, in her position inside of the company she works for, because of her age, she's often demeaned or looked down on or criticized for being younger, or, older women don't think that she knows what she's talking about, and things like that, simply because of her age. And so that's why her knee-jerk reaction was to be a little more defensive, even though we're having a harmless conversation about a movie. But that question triggered that defense response mechanism based on her story and her experiences. So when people like you take the opportunity to go and nurture somebody that we see is like, okay, I don't know why you're engaging this way in particularly, but I'm safe.
Right.
I'm safe, you're safe, everything's okay. And perhaps that helps that person heal, or starts their process to seeing like, oh, let me reflect a little bit. Maybe I was being a little too defensive in this moment. And how can I go and pay it forward and not be that way in the next conversation that I have?
Yeah, self-awareness is definitely key to that. And also too, like you mentioned some very important steps in that is in this that feeling of safety, like when
Yeah.
you're invited to somewhere or a new group that you're entering, and you just don't feel safe and settled, even if it's supposed to be a group for your particular demographic.
Yeah.
You don't have that feeling of safety until somebody extend that olive branch and is like, oh, you're new here, and then then your defenses come down and you're like, oh, I think I'm gonna like it here. Or the opposite, you don't get that olive branch reached, and you're like, no one talked to me, no one came reached out, and I don't think this is going to be the space for me, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many different things that come into play when we talk about creating a space where everybody feels safe, because safety looks different for people.
Yeah.
Maybe they are introverted and you have to find ways to reach into, or neurodivergent, or all of these other different things that come in to play when we talk about creating a space that everybody can exist and collaborate, which is what we want, right? Collaboration.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
and that's what we have to get to. And it goes beyond, right, using words.
Right. Right. Right.
we
I tell
we
my
will
corporate clients all the time, like, you don't get to say a space is safe because you said so, right?
right.
It has to have that feeling, and you have to have certain behaviors present to have that be there, to
Yeah.
communicate that and feel it, and the actions of the space, right? If I tell you to come in my space, it's a safe space, and then the first thing you do is make a post and you get attacked for what you're saying, you're like, safe for who? Right? What is
Right.
safety? Can we define safety, please?
Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
that whole storming, norming, forming, all of the cycles we go through when getting into a space, and you're like, and that's what I want to avoid. I want to skip that introductory part of filling out a space and creating that initial, you're safe here. Like, even if you think you're a hot mess,
Yeah.
you're safe to be a hot mess, right? Because that means that there's something that you need to fill in those gaps. And that was really the vision behind creating the collective,
Yeah.
and having it a space for individuals to be themselves, right?
Yeah.
Built by them. So it's not me saying this space is safe, but for you, by you. Let me
Yeah.
know what it is you need. And I think that is what really defines safe spaces.
Yeah. And in defining that, there's also a component of, right, so like you just mentioned, there's a component of allowing that person to provide input on what a safe space means to them and what their needs are. And also, you already understanding some key concepts, right, of safety. Whoever's creating the space, safety is safety.
Right.
So there are, like you mentioned, there are key concepts of what it means for somebody to experience safeness, to experience security. And these are often biological. What does it feel in my nervous system? What
Mhm.
emotional states are usually present when somebody feels safe? And how can you create an experience that elicits those emotional responses just by how somebody first engages? When you attend events, and I've always said this, when I would go to even networking events, there's never anybody who greets people. You just kind
Right.
of walk into the room. You just and this is, I don't know who does, like, where, because it's everywhere. I can go to a networking event here in Dallas. I can go to a networking event in Chicago. It is everywhere. I don't know where this concept started, that this is like how you do a networking event. You just let people show up and walk in the room, but you don't have anyone there to greet them, to welcome them into the space, to make them feel that sense of safety. Hey, who are you? The extent that they might have is a sign in for them to say, oh yeah, you RSVP, what's your name? Okay, you're
Pop your
here.
business card in the bowl there and move on. And that's a really good point, because whoever's hosting the event, and I recently hosted a networking event,
Mhm.
and you're running around, right, trying to do all the things. So having someone like look around and be like, has someone been greeted, or is somebody alone? Is somebody looking like they're terrified to even be here?
Yeah.
That is a great idea. You're right. We just set up these events and you show up and you hope you find somebody to hang with.
Yeah, because remember the village, right? The village is about looking out for one another,
Yeah.
keeping an eye on one another. When we tell people, you might leave your purse and like, I'm running to the restroom real quick, keep an eye on my purse. Well, the concept behind that isn't just be aware that it's there. The concept behind that is I want you to watch it. I want you to protect it. I want you to take care of it. I don't want you to let it fall on the ground. I don't want you to let somebody come take it. I
Right.
don't want you to let something drip and fall on it. Like, I want you to keep an eye on it. I want you to care for it, to protect it, right? To safeguard it. And so that's the same thing with the village. When we go back to tribal times, the village is you kept an eye on everyone, you took care of everyone. So when you step into a space, or when people step into your space, the question is, how can I take care of them? How can I keep an eye on them? How can I make them feel supported? How can I make them feel nurtured? And I like that having somebody whose designated role is to look out for people who might be alone, who might be standing around, and you can tell this is maybe their first time coming to one of your networking events because they don't know all the regulars and they're not talking with the regulars. But those sorts of experiential type of things are what we need to think about. And I talk about it in the idea of like creating an experience, designing an experience for people, because that's a concept that people more readily understand because we talk about CX, customer experience, client experience, and all of those sorts of things. But because we're coming from the perspective of the village, that's really where that comes from. This isn't new. The idea
Right.
of designing an experience for someone isn't new. You design an experience for someone because the real root and core behind that is the concept of what the village should be. You learning to keep an eye on somebody, to have their back, to care for them, to support them, to nurture them. And that's what every client needs. That's what every customer needs. That's what anybody who's growing a business needs. They need people, a collective that is willing to keep an eye on them, to have their back, not just in words, but in action and thought. Am I thinking thoughts about how to be supportive for the people that are coming into my village, into my networking event, into my space, into my realm?
Yes, 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 and yes. And like I'm just sitting here like a bobblehead as we talk, because like we always are in alignment, and like this is why we continue to come back and have conversations with each other. But it is just so important to have these conversations and to really be vulnerable and say that you are in need of community. I think that was one of the big steps for me in getting out was I needed a community, I needed a village, and I needed people who were ahead of me in order to grow and expand. And finding that village made me want to create it, because
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't exist, right? So I'm like, I can create the vision that I want to see. And getting out in the city that I live in and being able to actually meet people in person made some wonderful, amazing connections, and just wanting to expand on that whole idea. But we have to first talk about healing and what that looks like
Yeah.
for us. Women are often multifaceted. We're wearing multiple hats, whether you're in business or you're a stay-at-home mom. There's still multiple hats that we're wearing, and we're always caretaking, even if we're not in a caretaker role, right? Even at work, you're worried about other people's feelings and how things is going to make someone else feel before you send an email. Like, you're rereading your emails, you're spending extra time and emotion in doing that. So
Yeah.
sometimes that healing process can be simplified, and people are like, this toxic positivity concepts come out, it's oversimplified,
Yeah.
and we don't really get to the core of actual healing. So let's dig into that a little bit, and talk about how we can reverse that, heal for real. Oh,
Yeah, I like heal for real, and that's true. It really does get oversimplified. I enjoy watching these creators on social media, and there's this gentleman who he gives these reenactments or renditions of motivational speakers, and a lot of these just terms like, just go for it, you got to want it bad as you can breathe, you got to, you just got to do it, you got to heal, learn to love yourself, and it's said, with such passion and force behind it, and it sounds good in the moment, and we get all rah. But when we talk about healing, it's very easy to see it through a commercialized lens. And
mhm.
that's what a lot of these motivational, oversimplified terms are. They're light, surface level approaches or thoughts and statements that don't always actually address the depth of what we carry. Right?
Right.
It's not enough to just say learn to love yourself. I'm sorry, can you explain what that even means?
Right.
What does
I'm a
that look
checklist type of
like?
person. What am I doing first? And then
Yes.
what? And then what next? Okay.
Yes, yes. Don't just say, "Oh, just love yourself." Okay, it might come that easily for you, I guess,
Right.
perhaps, but the reality is people true healing is multi-layered, and it's often extremely challenging, and it's extremely emotional. And we know when emotions are heightened, we can't think as clearly as we would. And so, like you said, women, we have so many layers. We're very multifaceted, and for women, who are so often caregivers and pillars in the communities, healing means a lot of relearning how to care for ourselves in ways we haven't even been taught. So if
Yes.
I haven't been taught something, I don't even have the frame of reference to even try to incorporate it, because I need to be taught it. And to be taught something means you do get a step by step. You do get the breakdown of what is step one, what does that mean, why is this important? You get the nuanced details of it, and then you get the application of it, and then how you implement it, and how you continue to replicate that, and then you go to step two.
Yep.
And that is teaching. That is how we learn. And so healing has to be that same process. A lot of times we enjoy the endorphins and those very wonderful good feelings when we hear the rah rah cheerleading
Yeah.
motivational statements. But that is not real healing, nor is just going and getting a mani and pedi, putting on a
Uh,
face mask,
yeah.
and those sort of ritualistic ideas
Right.
of
Right.
healing, right? Like, we're talking about deep soul, core beliefs, internal dialogue, our narratives, our stories. When that woman said X, why did you react defensively? Why did you immediately perceive it through the lens of your mindset as an attack to your character, to your abilities, or as critical? All of these things, we have to ask deeper questions, and we have to even unlearn things, right? And then we have to learn the right,
Right.
the healthier, because let me not say right. We have to learn the healthier way of thinking and perceiving things. And the only way to do that is to ask questions. Very simple way that women can start to reclaim their own narrative is, first, you need to know what it is. You
I
have to
was just about
identify what
to
your
say
narrative is. You have to
that.
identify
Sometimes you
the
don't
story.
even know. Yes, you
You
don't
don't
even know
know.
sometimes. Yeah.
Like, we could say stuff like, just change your mindset, change
Yeah.
your story. First of all, I don't even know what my mindset is, right? So the first step is identify. You need to identify what is the story that you're telling yourself about your life, about your abilities, about who you are, about what you can do, what you can have, what you can become, what your life will be like, the type of friends that you, and the story, the narrative is multi-dimensional. It's varied across the various different aspects of your life: health, wealth, relationships, finances. So you have to look at what's the story that you're telling yourself about the type of money you can make, about the type of friends you can have, about the type
Yes.
of man you can have, about the type of things that are accessible to you. What are the stories that you're telling yourself? That is the first step. You need to know your narrative, so then
And
you
some of
can
us do
own
not
your
know.
narrative.
Yeah, some of us have never lived in a space where we were even allowed to think about
Yep.
what we want for ourselves.
Yep.
And this you validation is so important to us, okay? And I'm getting that validation right now because the winter arc challenge, while everybody is talking about hustling to the end of the year and hustling on getting goals and everything, like I don't want to hustle a day in my life. I don't want to hustle out the bed. I don't want to hustle to the grocery store. I don't want to hustle at all, right? So with this winter arc, I was like, we need to softly land in 2025 and set that tone, right? But you can't do that if you don't know your core values.
Yeah.
And so the workbook I created, I was like, what would I put in this book if I was starting all over? And you know what the first assignment is the wheel of life. I absolutely love the wheel of life, and
The
you hit
will of
it.
life is so good.
Finances, relationship, where are you even struggling? Like you just know you're struggling, but you don't know where. And it could be like, oh, my finances are good, but work is horrible, or
Mm.
this, that, and the other. So that will let you show where the struggle is. And then what are your values? For a long time, I was just like, be nice. Like I didn't have anything concrete of like what it really meant to have values
Yeah.
because I'd never sat down and thought of who has time, right? That was the concept. Who has time?
Yeah.
But that led to me just being miserable, right? Because I'm just doing things out of like programming, messaging. You go get that good job, do these things, take care of your kids, right? We have this messaging that comes with just living and being born and getting into society. We have things we're supposed to do, and sometimes that messaging tells us what we can and cannot do.
Exactly.
That's where the ability to dream beyond that, because one of my goals was to be a philanthropy and to be able to give money away, and not just in a way where like I'm giving a $50 here, $50, like that Melinda Gates type money is
Yeah.
where I want to go. But somebody's like, you can't do that, because that's never happened maybe in my lineage, right? But why can't
Oh.
I? Right? Why can't I be that person to be
Like
able to?
why?
Yeah, right. And
Why
I think
can't
we
that
need to
happen?
be able to dream like that and not, I mean, I know there's systematic oppression and there's things that we have to go up against. However, you can still identify those things and become the person that you dream to be. And I talk about, what does it look like? What does it feel like? All of the senses, because you don't know. You're like, what would I want it to feel like? When I wake up and I'm in my dream
Yeah.
life. You're
Yeah.
waking up relaxed. You're not looking for the clock to go off, or somebody's abruptly waking you. What does it feel? What are you eating? What are you
Yeah.
drinking? All of these things will determine what does the weather feel like. And I don't think we sit down enough and have those conversations. So I'm telling you, this workbook is packed with so many different exercises that seem like annoying. Like doing the work is annoying because you're like, oh, values, what? I don't know. But when you sit down with self in the way that you need to and really contemplate on these things, like so much growth happens out of these things. And it's just amazing sometimes. And doing it together as a collective gives you those ideas, because I might have never thought of these things if you hadn't brought them up, right? If you hadn't said, oh, this is my experience and this is what I've been doing. That exists. It's just like sponsoring someone and opening doors for them. You're opening doors to the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
Because as a stay-at-home mom running my business from my house, and, I go to my office when I want to. I never thought I would be here. Not
Yeah.
that it was, it just wasn't something I thought it was just going to work and to take care of these kids, and then I don't know what was supposed to happen after that. And I did that, right? I've worked.
Mhm.
I've taken care of the kids. They're adults now. And then it was like, okay, now it's just you. Well, I got the two littles at home. Let me not forget about that. They don't count. They're self-sufficient at this age. But
Yeah.
what does my life look like now that I don't have that level of dependency? Because I feel like we spent those hustle years learning, and I didn't want that for my kids. Like, ease into adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Allow them to do that. me becoming a doula when my daughter became pregnant was me creating that village concept with me, right?
Yeah.
Because where else is she going to get it from?
Yeah.
Either I'm outsourcing or it's me becoming it, or and having the funds to outsource, right?
Yeah.
You need to outsource the cleaning, whatever it is that makes your life easier, or
Mm-hmm.
you to get into the life that you want to live. And you can do all of those things. So I absolutely validation, like I said, validation for the exercises that are in that workbook. If y'all don't have
Yeah.
that workbook, you need to download it time now, and we need to work on this and get you living and thinking in your values and
Yeah.
all of those things so you can
Well, that's
create.
where intentional that's what intentional living is.
Yes.
When you are living intentionally, it's not about you having inauthentic beliefs. You're navigating your life off of the stories and the narratives that were never authentic to you. They were given to you by other people, and you just took them for their word and adopted them. And sometimes we do it unconsciously, and we
Hmm.
take on these ideologies that other people have shared because you're in conversations with so and so. And then one day when somebody asks you a question, you're like, well, why do you do that? And you're like, well,
I don't
I
know
don't really know. I never
that.
really thought about it. But if you never really thought about it, how in the world did you just start doing it? Well, you adopted someone
Yep.
else's ideology, someone else's perception, perspective, belief, whatever, and then you just started operating off of it. And so when you sit down with yourself, like you're saying with your winter arc journaling, it really helps you identify all of these gaps, these blind spots that you have within yourself so that you can live an intentional life. An intentional life is about leading a life in a way that aligns with your values, with your beliefs, with your purpose, that aligns with what you want your life to look like. So in any situation that you're in, you're making decisions that are authentically tied to your values and your beliefs and the way that you want to present yourself to the world and the person that you want to be. So that's even how, like, when people talk about setting boundaries and healthy boundaries and identifying healthy boundaries and all of these things, honey, let me tell you, if you want to have healthy boundaries, you want to identify healthy boundaries, and you want to be able to uphold healthy boundaries,
Right,
it's
right.
about you knowing how to be intentional. It's about you knowing what you value, because boundaries are the space where people overstep your values, your belief, and you create boundaries around your values and your beliefs. I value being spoken to like this. I create a boundary for what I find to be disrespectful. And when you cross over that boundary, because that you crossing over that boundary directly affects the value that I hold, and so now you're going up against my value. Well, I got to protect my value, which means I got to protect the way that you're talking to me and protect myself. And
Right.
I have to stand in my boundary and tell you what my boundary is, right? So boundaries protect our values and our beliefs around every aspect of our life. That is what a boundary is. That's what a boundary is for. But if you don't know your values, if you don't know your beliefs, and you don't and you don't know what that needs to look like physically, it's hard for you to create boundaries around what you don't know. So you
Mhm.
have to identify all of these things so that you can create the boundary to
Ex-
support your healthy living, your mental health, your emotional wellness, and all of those things. And so healing is so important, because then when you do walk into these spaces where you are meeting women with all sorts of personalities, all sorts of their own histories and narratives and stories, when you can stand resolute and you have the resolve of your values, your beliefs, and your boundaries around those, you are able to more confidently navigate spaces. You're more able to confidently navigate selling your services. You're more able to confidently navigate understand, because now you can create your own sense of safety, because you're not allowing people to walk all over you or overstep your boundaries, your values, or diminish your boundaries and values, which also causes us to not trust ourselves and have resentment in ourselves.
Mhm.
All of these things continue to feed into our stories. So when we enter these spaces, healing is important because it's important for us individually, but it's also important for our interaction and engagement with the collective, with the other women that we
Yeah.
are wanting to be able to be a part of the village for and a part of the community for.
So many good nuggets dropped today. Like,
Cause
I
like
don't
I've
even.
been there, like I've been there, I've created
Yeah.
all of my own spaces,
Mhm.
working in business. I mean, I will, my story is simple. Black woman, South business. Nothing much else to be said. Black woman, South business, and the
Right.
many things that come with
Yes.
being in that sort of system, building a business, and being the Black woman that is classified as you're not like other Black women, or
Yeah.
those sorts of
Yes.
statements, right? Because you have a vernacular about yourself. But why? Because I pronounce my r's. I don't
You're
know,
so articulate,
I'm
though.
articulate, right? I can say the R at the end. I can articulate. I'm
Right. Right.
intelligent. I have degrees, whatever the case might be. But having to create those spaces, but being everything that I'm sharing is how I created those spaces, being very intentional. So that's how those spaces grew. Women wanted to come into these spaces. They wanted to navigate to the sense of safety that was there, the sense of openness, the sense of no shame, no ridicule, and that everybody's looking for that. Everyone is looking for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And women are especially looking for that. That's why these Facebook groups blow up. I mean,
Mhm.
they explode with women coming into them. But how we curate, that's the thing. Spaces have to be curated in order to reflect what a village is, because we haven't had it.
Right.
It's been lost. It's just been a concept. It's just been an idea, and unfortunately, some people think that the village is just surface level. I create the group. That's the village. No, the village has structure. Even in tribal times, the village has structure. It had rules.
Right.
There's rules of engagement. How do you engage with the village? How do you structure the village? How do you provide safety? Well, you provide safety because all the men go and hunt over here, and the women, they stay back and they have the kids and they're doing this. So, and they keep one guard there in case the wild boars or whatever want to come into the village. Like there's rules for engagement. The men go off to hunt because the women are focused on their things, because the men have they provide that safety for the women so that they don't have to go out there and do that sort of hunting and gathering and those sorts of things, or however we want to break it down. But the reality is inside of the village there's safety structures built, and then the way the people engage with each other also create more safety. So we can't just create spaces and say, oh, I got a group and it's growing. We have
Right.
to be intentional about curating and understanding what it means to have a safe space, and how do I create that experience and structure for the safety. And then the women who come in, also with the healing aspect, they help add to the safety of the community.
Yes. Absolutely. There. If you, we could talk for 45
I
hours
know.
and not get to half of the stuff that we need to talk about. So I'm gonna title this as "Where's the Village" Part 1, and
Yes.
we're gonna continue this conversation. So if you loved everything you heard in today's episode with Classie, make sure you subscribe to the channel and join the collective. All of these things, all the details will be in the show notes at the bottom for you to join. Get your winter arc workbook. Start working on learning your values. Where are you lacking? All of the things that we talked about today. I'm gonna let Classie slide us out with some words of wisdom and where to connect with her so that you also can be in her space getting these amazing emails on her email list and all of those great things, which will also be connected in the show notes. But one word of wisdom for us taking us out today, Classie.
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness, you're right. We can do this forever. But
Ever.
just the last thing that I want to say, just truly from my heart, is as you are walking this path, as you are making these changes, or as you're desiring to make these changes, I want you to remember one thing. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't mean it and that you don't really want it. And I'll tell you what I mean when I say that. A lot of times we have desires, but because we don't know how to get there, perhaps the way we're showing up in our lives doesn't really reflect that. And that's going to happen at the start of your journey of making change because you don't know what you don't know. So when people say things to you like, well, you don't want it bad enough then. You must not want it bad enough. You must not really want to change. You must not really want this. I want you to remember that you don't have to adopt that story that they're trying to project onto you, and that it actually is a lie. At the very beginning of any change journey, it is a desire first before it becomes an action and before it even starts to result and show up in your life. So the very first step of you growing towards healing, being more intentional, is acknowledging that you need to do it and remembering that the next step is you got to learn the steps. So be patient with yourself as you are seeking to grow, seeking to change, seeking to heal, seeking to find the village. Join the collective because it is a village. And as you hear with our conversation today, we're talking about how we can really reimagine the village and design it with true intention for that safety and security. So just remember that as you grow, as you shift, as you change, you have to be patient with yourself and pour love back into yourself. Don't allow anyone else's narrative. We're done with that. We've adopted enough of people's narratives. Now it's time to adopt and focus on our own. And so just remember, be patient with yourself and do not allow other people's idea of what your change, healing, or growth journey should look like affect the fact that you are actually on the path. It is simply your divine responsibility and your purpose to stay on the path, get your footing, and start walking, start moving. You might have to readjust, get your footing again. That's fine. And then start walking, keep moving. But as long as you're moving, it's not about what somebody else believes it should look like or how easily it should go. It's about your own expectations, and you get to create those. No one else does.
Yes, so much good advice. Yeah, I don't even know. I'm like, therapy for me, free therapy. I hope
therapy. You get therapy.
I hope you all felt the same way too. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Oh, you can find me. Is it on here for them to find me?
Yes, we will drop it in the show notes. However, how can they find you?
Oh, you can find me at the Classie Watson. So that's the THE Classie. So CLASSIE, as you see here on the screen, the Classie Watson on all social media channels. And the name of my business is Intentional Life and Business Design. So you can just go to intentionallifeandbusiness.com and find any information, resources about what it is that I do, how I support and serve my clients. We are a boutique intentional life design and business consulting studio that does all of the amazing things that we've talked about today in helping you design a business that truly reflects the life that you desire, the person you want to be, and the life you want to lead, and helps you create those routines and habits and operational structures that you need to grow more meaningfully. So That's how you can find me. Call me, beat me when you want to reach me.
And because you will continue to see her in our space, you'll see her again. So subscribe, like, share, all of that great stuff. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye. Either way, we're gonna get better.